Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Michael Costa Show. Today's video will be about how the racists are back in power and they're bringing back the Jim Crow era. Plus, at the end, a little bonus mention of the woke culture. The real racists, like I've said in other videos, are back in full throttle and are bringing back these racist measures from the 1950s and 60s, and their allies are pushing these crazy segregation type measures in universities and in schools in general, and now being pushed into institutions and corporations. So I'll start off with an article posted in the Reason magazine. It said, yes, black New York University students demanded segregated housing. No, the university didn't agree to it. NYU does not have and will not create student housing that excludes any student based on race. Well, yeah, because that would be illegal, according to the civil rights laws. Two black students at New York University created a petition calling on the administration to designate racially segregated housing for black and black identifying students. But contrary to viral social media claims, New York University has not agreed to this demand. New York University does not have and will not create student housing that excludes any student based on race, John Beckman, a spokesperson for the university, told Reason. The students who authored the petition, Brenna Johnson and Nia Robertson, told Fox News that NYU is a predominantly white institution, making it very difficult for black students to connect or find community, especially when incidents involving racism occur. They said their proposal was not about exclusion, but rather creating a space where black students can feel included. Yeah. They say that their proposal was not about exclusion, but that's exactly what they do. When they talk about institutional racism or systemic racism, they say that it's not the intent of the person that matters, because that person might not intend to be racist, but its impact of the policy or the way they're acting impacts a minority in a racist manner, right? So here, what they say that their proposal was not about exclusion. Well, the impact of that proposal is exclusion to certain people of certain race. So what they say from one side of the mouth and the way they act are two different things. It's a double standard that they don't even think it contradicts that's the whole thing about critical theory in general. Not only critical race theory, but critical theory in general, is that it's full of contradictions. They keep on contradicting themselves. And thank God people are starting to see these contradictions and are starting to say, oh, something doesn't make sense here. And I'll get into later on in the video how parents are standing up to these dangerous measures, whether it be segregation or diversity learning in school, basically telling white little kids that they're oppressors. Basically, that's what it is. But despite what the students said, the petition, which was signed by 1,000 people, inarguably uses the language of exclusion. It specifies that the housing must include floors completely comprised of black identifying students with black resident assistants. If a proposal requires that certain floors only include black students, then it is a proposal for racially segregated housing, period. That's what it is. Going further in the racial segregation on American campuses, Forbes published an op-ed by Richard Vedder, distinguished professor of economics emeritus at Ohio University. A widespread segregation on American campuses, a widespread phenomenon. The National Association of Scholars, a group of mostly academics interested in higher education, issues only a few research reports annually, but what they lack in quantity, they make up in quality. Their studies are extremely carefully done with well-documented research, A young NAS employee, Dion Pierre, has been researching the segregation of students on college campuses by race, special commencement exercises for African American students, living and recreational facilities segregated by race, black student unions, and so forth. These practices have existed for decades on some campuses, and rather than fading as racial prejudices decline, witness rapidly increasing interracial marriages, they are flourishing. The Pierre study, mostly completed, should be released around Martin Luther King Day in early 2019. All this is terribly ironic. In 1954, in Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, the U.S. Supreme Court effectively outlawed racial segregation in our schools. Angry whites, especially in the South, fought the attempt to integrate schools, often leading to violent protests, such as when James Meredith became the first black to enter the University of Mississippi in 1962. Civil rights leaders put their lives on the line working for a colorblind, non-race determined society. Most memorably, King, when he articulated his dream where people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. The bitter struggle to break down racial distinctions in education lasted for decades. Yet, now universities are reintroducing segregation, making race the primary determinant of student participation in some activities, such as black student unions or race-based housing facilities. So this study shows that in various universities, they are segregating based on race. Race-based housing facilities. Let me go on. College administrators facilitate this by constantly harping on race. They hire diversity coordinators in large numbers to check on the racial complexion of students, faculty, other staff, and even contractors. If diversity has any educational virtue, it is in the notion that individuals will intermix with others with different traits. Perhaps students coming from another area of the world or having a different sexual orientation, socioeconomic background, or skin color, the idea is people become more tolerant, more understanding of alternative perspective when they are exposed to individuals markedly different from themselves. Yet, having all black dorms or recreational areas is anti-diversity. In an Orwellian twist, the diversity coordinators are stifling interaction between people of different races. A news report says that the new diversity czar at my university, Ohio University, is wanting to create a workout room in the campus recreational center open only for minority students. White students who pay student activity fees to support the center would be excluded. Why? Two thoughts come to mind. First, college campuses are overwhelmingly left of center in political orientation. A new study by Samuel Abrams shows that this is particularly true of student affairs staffs. The people who run housing and allocate funds for social and cultural campuses events. Some 71% of 900 respondents labeled themselves liberal or very liberal, compared with 6% conservative. They publicize diversity in universities, but political diversity does not exist. They don't want that one. They don't want that diversity. There are almost 12 student affairs college administrators who are liberal for every conservative. Progressives tend to be more conscious of the group characteristics of individuals' identity politics, if you will. Part of this leads to a strong conviction that the identify of historically underrepresented groups needs to be publicized and given special attention. Conservatives or moderates are more likely to want to emphasize individual meritocracy and elimination of the evaluating people on the basis of such attributes as skin color, closer to the King position in his I Have a Dream speech. Second, I think some individuals without solid academic credentials push racial diversity as a means of gaining employment and or enhancing their income. What economics call rent-seeking colleges are falling over one another, creating new diversity officials at cushy six-digit salaries. What are they going to do besides harass campus employees in their efforts to achieve their racist agenda? Getting a better racial complexion among members of the university community, pushing race-specific forms of campus involvement becomes one way to occupy themselves while collecting a nice paycheck and reveling in the power they have over a cowed faculty. So this op-ed is from 2018. So we see this problem of the reemergence of segregation is not from yesterday, but it is getting much worse in 2020 and 2021 now. This is something we must look out for. We don't want our children and the next generation growing up thinking that everything must be separated by race. That's not the way we should live. We're all one human race. And like I've said before, my principle in all this racial tension, like Morgan Freeman said, is let's stop talking about racism. I see you for who you are as a man or a woman, and you see me for who I am as a man or a woman. Not based on the color of my skin. And I won't base my judgment on the color of your skin. Obviously, there's still going to be stupid, racist people around. But they were marginalized. But now they're coming back because of these stupid measures and these professors separating everything by race. In the Wall Street Journal op-ed piece, let me show you a bit of how they introduce these racist measures in schools. California's ethnic studies mandate, a new curriculum rejects merit and sees oppression everywhere. Conservatives in the 1990s worried about the rise of critical race theory in higher education, but at least college students were there by choice, and the Marxist-influenced courses, which indicated American values, were often optional. That's changing fast as the largest U.S. state moves this week toward imposing a radical ethnic studies curriculum as a high school graduation requirement. The slippery slope people have been warning you about for years is happening right now. The recent push to mandate ethnic studies in California public schools has met resistance from liberals and conservatives, including a surprise veto last year from Government Gavin Newsom. He called for revisions in the model curriculum before the state required it. But now that some of the eyebrow-raising parts have been edited out, like an assignment about Jews gaining racial privilege, the final course will be presented to the State Board of Education on Thursday. Once it's approved, the legislature can again send Mr. Newsom its bill to make it a mandatory for K-12 students. So what will California teenagers be taught? A multitude of ethnic groups have shaped the American experience, and some of the material presents that history. But the thrust of the hundreds of pages of course outlines is to enlist students in progressive politics. One of the main focus of ethnic studies is translating historical lessons and critical race theory into direct action for social justice. A course outline says, this requires that students are taught to view the American creed as sinister. One lesson plan, it makes me laugh when they said that students are taught to view the American creed as sinister. But yet, they say that the United States or Western civilization is the worst in the world, is an oppressor, is a bad place to live. But yet they're okay with everybody around the world wanting to live here. Everybody would die to live in Western civilization, or especially in the United States. Actually, people do. Every year, like it's happening right now, that they are going on a journey of thousands of miles, kilometers, if you will, for people that are still in the metric system, or that are in the metric system, to try to reach the United States through deserts, through swamps, through lakes. Many die. So if the United States is such a bad place to live, why do millions of people want to move here or to the United States? One lesson plan introduces students to what it calls dominant narratives, defined as stories told in service of the dominant social group's interests and ideologies. A University of Michigan lesson plan that forms the basis for the outline explains that one example of dominant narrative was the antebellum claim that slavery is necessary for the well-being of slaves. A contemporary example, according to the lesson plan, that America is a meritocracy and anyone can achieve their ambitions through hard work and perseverance. That is what I believe. That's one of my principles and by life experience, I know that is true. Why would California want to teach young people that their dreams of rising through merit are akin to the defenses of slavery? Because a core tenet of ethnic studies is that person's identity is determined first and foremost by group membership. Another teaching resource warns that if we accept meritocracy, then we would strive to do our best on our own and should focus on individual achievement. Ethnic studies wants to invert traditional American ideas of individual merit, opportunity, and success. It imposes its own dominant narrative that interprets all social interactions through the lens of oppression, including a worksheet on the 4 I's of oppression: ideological, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized. Terms repeated throughout. If America's traditional narratives are designed to encourage social mobility and prosperity, California's proposed Marxist narratives are designed to encourage intergroup conflict and perpetual upheaval in existing institutions. That's explicit in sample assignments, such as drafting a manifesto of demands for the Third World Liberation Front or implementing a systemized campaign for social justice at their school. When we encounter dominant narratives, the curriculum says, we must always ask, what is the motivation behind this narrative? Californians would do well to ask the same question about the radical narrative promoted in this mandatory curriculum. The motivation is a left-wing power grab, and it's not in the interest of ordinary Californians of any ethnicity. So this is all about politics. This is not about protecting people of minority or anything done about to do a race. This is about politics. This is about grooming children to their politics, indoctrination, propaganda, whatever you may call it. That's what's happening in our schools, not only in the United States, but here as well. So this is what's happening in schools. Segregation, unconscious learning, biased learning, basically, like I said at the beginning, teaching young white students or children that they are the oppressors, and asking them to identify themselves as their identity group. That's all taught in intersectionality. Another school of thought coming from the School of Frankfurt, with postmodernism, intersectionality, critical theory. So now I've showed you that, what's happening in our schools. Now I'll show you how teachers react, certain teachers, not all, because there's some great teachers out there and I know a lot of them. But here how teachers react when parents start standing up to these things. Teachers compile a list of parents who question racial curriculum, plot war on them, infiltrate, shut down their websites, expose these people publicly. A group of current and former teachers and others in Loudoun County, Virginia, compiled a lengthy list of parents suspected of disagreeing with school system actions, including its teachings of controversial racial concepts, with a stated purpose, in part to infiltrate, use hackers to silence parents' communications and expose these people publicly. Members of a 624-member private Facebook group called Anti-Racist Parents of Loudoun County named parents and plotted fundraising and other offline work. Some use pseudonyms, but the Daily Wire has identified them as a who's of the affluent jurisdiction outside D.C., including school staff and elected officials. The Sheriff's Criminal Investigations Division is reviewing the matter, but the group activities might be no surprise to top law enforcement because the county's prosecutor, narrowly elected with the help of $845,000 in cash from George Soros, appears to be a member of the Facebook group. Secret communications reviewed by the Daily Wire do not offer any evidence of racism by the group's targets, or even attempt to. Their opponents were apparently those who objected to, sought to debate, or were even simply neutral about critical race theory, a radical philosophy opposed by many liberals and conservatives, but increasingly embraced by governments. So this is what the teachers do when parents start standing up and start organizing to fight these racist measures that they don't want their kids exposed to, or these are what school board officials, teachers, and the government, local government officials do. They target, they dox, they try to cancel them, making them lose their jobs, outing them publicly. This is the game they're playing. That's why more need to stand up and support groups like these parents that are standing up and fighting for their children. And if you think these teachers that act like this is only in the States, well, you're wrong. Let me show you a bit closer to home. A professor of law and medicine at University of Ottawa, Amir Attaran. I've mentioned him before in my videos. He says here, I wonder what he's teaching his students, but he says here on Twitter, Quebec's hospitals seem to kill Black and Indigenous patients after they record pleas for help. It's the Alabama of the North, assassins. These are the racists, people. These are the racists, the way they think. See that Quebec hospitals are killing Black and Indigenous patients. That's a generalization using isolated events to prove a generalized point that the Quebec as a whole is racist. He's the racist. He's the bigot. Plain and simple. I would like, if there's anybody that's at University of Ottawa and has any information on this Professor Amir Attaran, I'd like to hear from you. Send me a private message if you have any information on this teacher. I'd like to expose him as the bigot he is. So I showed you the part of the bad teachers. Now let me show you a good teacher that's also standing up against these stupid measures. Critical theory in general.
Hi, I'm a teacher speaking on behalf of every fed-up teacher in this nation. This school district continues to show up on national news, and it is absolutely embarrassing to see what once used to be the nation's leading school district has desecrated to. This school district is upon almost every single school district in the nation that continues to force teachers through mandatory training where we are told to examine our whiteness, white privilege, white supremacy, microaggressions upon every other thing that is absolutely stupid and racist. Now, the same school district wants to threaten to fire teachers who do not agree with a critical race theory. You are the face of privilege. You do not speak for us if you do not work with us. If you keep up this racist insanity, you will have successfully stripped us of every ounce of love of teaching, and so far you have succeeded in doing that. Keep this up and you will lose all of your teachers at the same rate that you have been losing these incredible families who, some of you, fall asleep when they're trying to get your attention. God bless.
I'm glad that teachers are standing up and parents are standing up. Is it enough? I'm not sure. Is it too late? Maybe. But at least we're standing up, exposing these school boards and these local government officials for the bigots and racists they are. Now I want to show you some people that are standing up, some celebrities that are standing up for this too, because usually you would see many celebrities that fall into don't want to hurt their careers, so they fall in line with this woke bullshit, if you will. So for people that watched, not many people watched because it went down more than 50%. I think only 8 million people watched the Grammys this past week, and a lot of woke BS. But at one certain point, Bill Burr went up to present an award. Now the Grammy organizers, I don't know if they were setting him up for him to make fun of him or for him to slip up or make a mistake, but they send him to present the award for Best Latino Album. So he made a few jokes, and he butchered the winner's name. So as he butchered the woman's name, he made fun of himself for butchering the woman's name. And then he said, oh, there must be so many feminists watching this that they're thinking, why is a cis white straight man presenting an award for Latinos? And oh my God, did the internet mob lose its collective brain. They're like, yeah, how come this cis white straight man is presenting awards for Latinos? Oh my God, they're crying online, oh my God. Well, one of them said this: while I'm not suggesting Bill Burr is a racist, he's a white blue checkmark. I think he's a journalist or a writer, but he's a blue checkmark, so he's a verified account on Twitter. While I'm not suggesting Bill Burr is a racist, a white man having a non-white wife can sometimes be a sign of racism. See when I say racism everywhere? So you shouldn't assume someone isn't racist just because they own a minority sex servant. They may very well have one because they're racist. So this white writer, verified account on Twitter, is the real racist. So it comes back to, he's a white supremacist, thinking that a white man, when marries a minority person, that person automatically is a minority sex servant. How racist and disgusting is that? But you want to see how Bill Burr's wife answered? Her name is Nia Renee Hill. Well, she answered, bitch, shut the fuck up. That's right. It's time that we lose our politeness with these racists. Calling a minority person that marries a white man as a sex servant? That's pure racism. That's what it is, and I'm glad Nina Renee Hill stood up for herself. This guy's a loser, and the tweet is still there. He didn't even erase it, so I don't think he even thinks there's anything wrong with what he says. And Twitter obviously has nothing wrong with it for breaking their community standards. Calling a minority a sex servant because she married a white man doesn't go against their community standards. Oh, please. Your only community standards is a reason to ban conservatives or suspend them, or people that don't toe the narrative that they want us to follow. Another person that's standing up to these nonsense political movements, soccer player Wilfried Zaha. Why Wilfried Zaha refused to take the knee ahead of Crystal Palace versus West Brom? Wilfried Zaha has stood firm on his promise to not take the knee ahead of Crystal Palace's Premier League clash with West Brom. The 28-year-old forward stood as players, match officials, and staff knelt before the opening whistle at Selhurst Park on Saturday. Zaha was back in the Palace starting 11 for the first time since the beginning of February, having missed 5 games due to a thigh injury, and made his comeback off the bench against Tottenham last weekend. The Ivory Coast international declared during his injury layoff he would no longer take part in the degrading gesture, insisting the protest has lost all impact. Premier League footballers began taking the knee before kickoff when football resumed last June to highlight racial injustice and discrimination against black people. In a statement released on Saturday afternoon, Zaha said, "My decision to stand at kickoff has been public knowledge for a couple of weeks now. There is no right or wrong decision, but for me personally, I feel kneeling has just become a part of the pre-match routine, and at the moment, it doesn't matter whether we kneel or stand. Some of us still continue to receive abuse. I know there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes at the Premier League and other authorities to make change, and I fully respect that, and everyone involved. I also fully respect my teammates and players at other clubs who continue to take the knee. As a society, I feel we should be encouraging better education in schools, and social media companies should be taking stronger action against people abuse others online, not just footballers. I just want to focus on football and enjoy being back playing on the pitch. I will continue to stand tall. So even though I might not agree with everything he said, I definitely agree with the part about how he's describing what kneeling has become. It's a political gesture. That's all it is. And it's a type of virtue signaling to show how virtuous they are. Oh, I knelt, so I'm an ally. I believe in these things, and I am on your side. Meanwhile, not doing nothing concrete to help the real problem. So that was my whole thing on critical race theory for this video, and how they're bringing back Jim Crow era segregation, how teachers react to when parents stand up against their children's exposure to this kind of education, dangerous education. I've showed you how a teacher from University of Ottawa is a blatant bigot, and I would like to know what he's teaching his students or what's happening in those classrooms. I showed you how a teacher, some teachers are standing up and what she said. I showed you how another verified writer on Twitter, how they're the real racists by what he said about a black woman marrying a white man being a minority sex servant. But now I would like to end my video with a quick mention of the woke culture. So like I said before about the Grammys, well, we saw a little baby, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but he did a performance basically glorifying the riots of the last summer and putting buildings on fire, while a racist activist said a speech. But also, there was the WAP, that I will not mention what it stands for, performance by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. While on one way, see, I don't want to ban anything. I don't want to cancel anything. They're going to live with the consequences of showing this material on national TV. That's why the ratings have gone down. But if you're gonna say that Dr. Seuss, Pepe Le Pew, Dumbo, and now Aladdin, yesterday I saw that Disney are putting a disclaimer, a viewer's discretion advised before the movie goes on. When you're canceling all these things because you don't want children exposed to that. But at the same time, you have no problem with a softcore lesbian performance, softcore porn lesbian performance up on stage on national TV during the Grammys when millions of people are watching, then you're the problem, basically. Wow, this is on network TV. Raunchy Grammy Awards sparks outrage, sheds viewers. Not even the most sexually explicit show in Grammy Awards history could turn out the viewers. The 63rd annual award ceremony that aired Sunday on CBS was on pace to hit a ratings low with a time zone adjusted audience of 8.8 million, according to CBS Entertainment. That's a 53% drop from the 18.7 million who tuned in last year's program. Viewership plunged despite, or maybe because of, a politically woke show that featured tributes to last year's Black Lives Matter protests and a speech from former Women's March leader Tamika Mallory, who declared President Biden, "We demand justice, equity, and policy." The program moved quickly from PG to NC-17. However, when rapper Cardi B did a pole dance and performed her hit song WAP by joining Megan Thee Stallion for a sexually explicit interlude on a giant bed, a scene that for mainstream news outlets was indescribable. As a news service that must adhere to strict editorial standards, we cannot tell you what WAP stands for. And we can't really say what Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B were rapping about or simulating during their performance either. The BBC said it's in its coverage. It's just stupid. Let's just say that the live TV debut performance of their X-rated hit took place on a giant bed and they did not look at all tired. In other words, the episode went well beyond the most memorable performance of the 2003 MTV Video Music Awards when Madonna and Britney Spears kissed during a song that it failed to spark anything resembling the same uproar. So in close to 20 years, think about that though, folks. In close to 20 years, we've went from two singers, if you will, two celebrity singers kissing on the stage of the 2003 MTV Video Music Awards to basically pornographic material on the stage of the Grammys. See, when people complained in 2003 about the Britney Spears and Madonna kissing, it wasn't basically about Madonna and Britney Spears kissing. It was a slippery slope like everything else people have been warning about. You start with this because like in everything in life, you give a hand, they want the arm. So there was no problem with Madonna and Britney Spears kissing, actually. But as we moved on, it got crazier and crazier and crazier, and now we're literally at the point where you cancel Pepe Le Pew. You stop publishing Dr. Seuss books, and libraries are banning their books from their shelves. You're putting viewer discretion advisories on movies like Dumbo and Aladdin and Sesame Street and The Muppets. But yet let me be polite, two celebrity singers performing pornographic show, basically, up on stage during the Grammys, the most prestigious award show in the music industry. You can't tell me that we haven't gone on a slippery slope since 2003. So now let me show you from the satire site, the Babylon Bee, which do great satire. And they published this piece saying the Babylon Bee's guide to being woke. And this thing is hilarious. That's why I wanted to show you. So here are the things that the guide to being woke. Carefully choose your pronouns and then scream them at everyone you meet. Whenever you go to Costco, loudly scream your pronouns in shoppers' faces. If anyone refuses to celebrate your pronouns, smash a giant box of pretzels over their head and call the manager. Select the most oppressed identity possible. Test people's loyalty to the cause by identifying as a walrus and cancel anyone who doesn't make walrus noises every time they see you. Compare everything to Nazis. Compare everything to Nazis as long as you're a Democrat. If you're a Republican, this might get you fired. Learn to hate the right people. Hate is good when directed at the correct targets. All you have to do is follow the guidelines of a mentally ill Twitter mob who will help steer your hate in the right direction. Pre-order David Hogg's Good Pillow. You want to sleep at night, don't you? Classify everyone according to their race and not as an individual. Always loudly acknowledge the skin color of every person you talk to and make it the main subject of the conversation. See, when satire almost meets reality. Well, in that case, it does meet reality. If you are white, do not have any black friends. This might trick you into thinking you aren't racist. Yep. To help atone for your racist past, try some casual segregation. Create safe spaces where everyone is segregated by race, gender, and gender identity. It's the only way to achieve unity. Anyone who objects to this is racist. Vote for policies that sound virtuous, no matter how much they actually harm people of color. Always vote for policies with virtuous sounding names, even if they destroy black and brown communities. Appearance is everything. True that. Always have extremely low expectations for minorities. Be sure to constantly remind them they can never overcome their circumstances without your help. It's the whole thing of the racist white liberal, that only him can save minorities. They're the bigots. Abandon religion and instead accept everything the woke crowd believes without question. Your religious beliefs are at odds with others. You should fix that and accept wokeism. Repeat after us. Wokeism is not a cult. 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 Fight, baby. Achieve inner peace by constantly beating yourself up for not doing better. Place a hard yoke and a heavy lifelong burden upon yourself that will never be satisfied and that will never offer grace, forgiveness, or rest. That's pretty much it. Get back to us when you have achieved all this. We'll probably have a new list for you. Guys, this is satire, but this is real, man. This is the guide to being woke. Do we really want to be woke? I'd rather you be awake to the bigotry that these people are pushing forth. We don't want our children growing up being separated by their identities of race, gender, or sexual orientation. We're all one. All for one and one for all, baby. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Michael Costa Show. Hope to see you soon. Peace out.